Kameleo is the tool people bring up the moment the conversation turns to mobile profiles or a real automation API, and it tends to get either breathless praise or a shrug, rarely a straight read. So let me give you the honest version. Today I want to look at Kameleo specifically, what it actually is, where its mobile profiles and its scripting story genuinely earn a place, and where the marketing runs well ahead of what the tool really does. No undetectable promises, no claim that any browser keeps your account safe, just a plain read from someone who runs these setups for real. Quick note on where this comes from before I start. I run real proxy and cloud phone farms, and I test these browsers hands on the way multi-accounters actually use them, with real proxies attached, and every profile read through a public checker. Any verdict I give here is tied to what Kameleo did in that testing, not to a commission, and not to the fantasy that the browser can stop bans, because none of them can. What a tool controls is one half of the identity, the device half, and I will be clear throughout about where that half ends and your own work begins. The start playing. Kameleo is an anti-detect browser built around running many separate browser profiles, each with its own fingerprint, cookies, and proxy. It comes from a smaller, focused team rather than a giant marketing machine, and that shows in how the product feels, more technical and developer-leaning than mass-market polished. It ships its own Chromium and Firefox builds, so you are not locked to a single engine, and it does one thing almost nothing else in the category does at all, which is the whole reason most people look at it. That one thing is mobile. Most desktop anti-detect browsers are exactly that, desktop only, so every profile you make is some flavor of desktop Chrome or Firefox. Kameleo can emulate mobile device fingerprints, presenting a profile as an Android or an iPhone-style device instead of a laptop. If the accounts you run live mostly on phones, and a lot of them do, presenting a coherent mobile identity from your desktop is a genuine standout the rest of the field simply cannot match. It is the single feature that most sets Kameleo apart. Here is the honest caveat on that mobile feature, because it is not a magic button. It is still an emulation of a mobile device, not an actual phone, and a mobile profile only holds together if the network underneath it agrees. That means it really wants a real mobile proxy behind it, because a phone-shaped fingerprint riding on a data center IP is a contradiction a good detector will catch. The mobile capability is powerful, but it raises the bar on your proxy sourcing rather than lowering it, and anyone selling it as instant undetectable mobile accounts is skipping the part that actually matters. On the engines, Kameleo gives you both a Chromium build and a Firefox build, which puts it in the small group of tools that are not Chromium only. That matters because a Chromium-only tool makes every profile look like some variant of Chrome, and Firefox profiles are simply rarer in most detection data, so they can help you blend where the Chromium crowd is saturated. Stack the mobile profiles on top, and Kameleo gives you more real surface variety than most competitors, which is a legitimate reason to reach for it if variety across engines and device types is what you need. Now the part that decides it for a lot of people, the price. Kameleo does not give you a meaningful free tier the way Gulon and EdgePower do. There is a short trial, then paid plans priced by how many profiles you keep and how long you commit. It sits mid to premium, not the cheapest and not the most expensive. And whether it is worth the money comes down to one question: whether you actually use the two things you are paying a premium for, the mobile profiles and the automation API. If you use neither, you are overpaying for a tool aimed at someone else. Onto fingerprints, which is what people actually buy these tools for. Kameleo generates coherent profiles and lets you adjust the usual surfaces, the canvas, the WebGrow renderer, the fonts, the time zones, and the rest. As with every tool I test, the point is never that it can change values, they all can. It is whether they agree with one another and stay stable when a site reads them twice. So I do not trust the settings panel. I read the result through a checker every time across a desktop and a mobile profile. Here is what my testing actually showed, because a verdict has to be grounded in the test and not the sales page. I spun up 3 profiles, one Chromium desktop, one Firefox desktop, and one mobile. Attached a separate proxy to each, a residential IP for the desktop pair and a mobile IP for the phone, and ran all 3 through Creep.js and a couple of verdict-style checkers. All 3 came back internally consistent. The canvas and web ghost stories matched the device each profile claimed. The mobile profile read as a coherent phone rather than a laptop wearing a phone label, and the values held stable across reloads. Once each proxy was set correctly, no real IP leaked through WebT. That is a strong result, and I want to be careful about how you read it. It is not proof that Kameleo makes anything undetectable, and it's not a promise your account survive, because a clean fingerprint at one moment is the floor you expect at this price, not a guarantee about tomorrow. What the test tells you is narrow and useful, that the tool produces coherent, stable profiles across desktop and mobile when you feed it a matching proxy. Everything after that is still on you, and no checker score changes that. Here is the part the affiliate reviews skip, and it is true no matter which plan you buy. Kameleo does not save a bad proxy, and it cannot. Every profile rides on its own proxy, and that proxy is half of whether the account survives. And with the mobile profiles, that half gets more demanding, not less, because real mobile IPs cost more and are harder to source cleanly. The sourcing and the geographic matching are on you. And at volume, the proxy bill often dwarfs the subscription. A coherent phone fingerprint on the wrong network is still a flag waiting to happen. For the technical crowd, this is where Kameleo really makes its case. It is built API first, with a documented local API and hooks into Selenium, Puppeteer, and Playwright, so you can create profiles and drive them programmatically at scale without clicking through a dashboard. Of all the tools in this category, Kameleo is one of the most comfortable to wire into a real automation pipeline, and if you are a developer or you run scripted workflows, that API is very likely the reason you would pick it over a prettier but more closed competitor. There is also a quiet point in its favor on where your data sits. Kameleo keeps profiles and runs its API locally by default, so your cookies and sessions live on your own disk rather than only on a vendor's servers. For operators who care where their account data lives, and you probably should, that local first default is worth more than it looks next to the cloud-only tools that hold everything on their side. A tool you live in all day is judged on its interface, and Kameleo's is leaner and more technical than the glossy cloud dashboards. You get profiles, folders, and the controls you need, but less of the hand-holding and onboarding polish that a tool like AdsPower leans on to win beginners. That is not a flaw so much as a personality. Kameleo assumes you know roughly what you are doing and gets out of your way. If you want a tool that explains everything, this is not the smoothest first landing, and that is fair to weigh before you commit. On Teams, Kameleo has options, but it is less agency-heavy than something like multilogin, which is built around large shared workspaces and granular roles. For a solo operator or a small technical crew, that is fine, arguably better because there is less overhead. The caution is the same one I give everywhere. Every extra person who can open a profile is another way its fingerprint and behavior can drift or get linked. So treat shared access as a risk you manage carefully. Now the direct warning, the same one I give for every tool here. Kameleo's mobile feature gets weaponized in the marketing, framed as if a phone-shaped fingerprint were some magic bullet that makes accounts untouchable. Tune that out completely. No browser is undetectable. Mobile emulation is not immunity. And any review that promises your accounts will never get banned is selling you something, usually an affiliate link. Judge Kameleo on the concrete things, the coherent desktop and mobile profiles, the two engines, and the strong API, and ignore the outcome promises entirely. So where does Kameleo actually fit best? It fits operators who need mobile profiles that hold up, developers and scripted workflows that lean on the API, and technical users comfortable in a leaner tool who want their data stored locally. If your accounts live on phones, or you are building a real automation pipeline, or you value where your profiles physically sit, Kameleo lines up with those needs in a way most of the field does not, and the price starts to read as reasonable once you are using what it is built for, and where it fits less well, honestly. If you are a total beginner who wants maximum polish, heavy onboarding, and a free tier to learn on, the cheaper and glossier tools are a gentler place to start. If you never touch mobile and never script, you are paying for two headline features you will leave switched off. And a lighter desktop tool would serve you just as well for less. There is no shame in starting cheaper and moving to Kameleo the day your setup actually needs it. Be clear-eyed about the ceiling. because this is where honesty matters most. Kameleo manages the device half of your identity well, across both desktop and mobile. And the API and the local storage are real advantages, but it does not control your proxy, it does not control your behavior once you are logged in, and it cannot do anything about how a platform's detection shifts over the weeks you use an account. It reduces one class of problem and leaves the rest, the proxy, the pacing, the discipline, squarely to you. If you want to judge it for yourself, and you really should before you pay, the test is quick and concrete. Take the trial, create 3 profiles, 1 Chromium desktop, 1 Firefox desktop, and 1 mobile. Attach a real proxy to each, a residential IP for the desktop ones, and a genuine mobile IP for the phone, and run all 3 through PreepJS and a verdict style checker while you look the proxies up separately for reputation and geolocation. Confirm the device story and the network story, agree on each one, and that the mobile profile is coherent all the way down. Then, if you script, poke the API on a small scale, and an afternoon of that tells you whether Kameleo buys you anything your work will actually use. So the honest look. Kameleo's real edges are its mobile profiles, its 2 browser engines, its API-first automation, and its local storage, with coherent desktop and mobile fingerprints that held up in my testing. It is not the cheapest, it is leaner and more technical than the polished cloud tools. The proxy work is still yours and gets harder with mobile, and the ceiling is the same as every other tools. I test these browsers on real multi-account setups, so the full written review with the tested results and the picks I actually trust is at antidetectbrowser.org, with no undetectable promises anywhere. If this gave you a straighter read than the affiliate crowd, subscribe for more honest, tested anti-detect browser reviews.